to the latest edition of the Inside Track, sponsored by FitPhone and Independent Gyms. This week, fantastic guest. I've been trying to get Steffie on for a while, so here we are, season 3. Welcome, Steffie from ABC Solutions. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, just to get us started, Steffie, do you want to give us a run through of who you are, who you work for, what your sort of career, where you've been and come to?
Yeah, awesome. The bit that everyone loves, not. So yeah, I'm Steffie. I'm customer success manager for GymSales, powered by ABC Fitness now. I've been with the business coming up nearly 5 years, actually.
Wow.
But prior to that, I was involved being an operator as well. So being an area manager, operations, sales manager, all sorts of stuff, both here in the UK and also back in Australia. So pretty much in my blood, really, the fitness industry.
Wow. And what sort of companies you've been working for? What are the names?
Yeah, so back in Australia, some of the FLG groups, so Good Life Health Clubs, Go Health Clubs, over here, Snap Fitness, yeah.
Wow. So you've got, in terms of your experience in sales, that's pretty much where you've been. You've sort of done all the sales and the operations. Now you've gone into sort of the CRM and driving sales from the other side. In terms of your experience, what would you say is sort of been the big change in how sales have been done in the Les clubs over the last, 5-10 years?
Yeah, I think it's constantly evolving. If I'm honest, it's always evolving. I think probably as of late, the big thing we see is that we don't necessarily have sales teams anymore. We have multi-skilled teams, and we're asking our reception team or our duty managers or our club managers even to be involved in the sales process more than ever, if anything, and very much having those multi-skilled teams. I think we're going away from the old school approach of, coming in and, we get a lead, we have a phone call, we book that appointment in, we ask them to come in for an appointment, we show them around and we do a hard close. I think we have to be smarter than that these days. There's lots out there. It's a competitive market and you have to be different.
What do you think? Because I mean, a lot of clubs, when you look at it, sometimes need that hard skill. But I appreciate, yes, we're having to change as well. So where do you find that sort of balance is? Because I think a lot of clubs, especially as we've moved away from having the big sales teams, which I'm like you, I was very much used to having 4, 5, 6 of us in a sales team driving sales every day. But where do you think? Because obviously we've moved away from that with the reception and the PTs and the gym team now doing sales. But do you think we've moved too far in the sense? Because a lot of clubs I work with, it tends to be now we seem to have shifted to this museum tour, which obviously in our day, that was, we don't do that. We get them sat down and we do a proper tour. I mean, it's trying to find that balance, isn't it, in between somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I always talk about having a hybrid approach. I think you've got to have a mix of it. I mean, granted, there's a lot of clubs out there now that can't have sales teams and they just don't have the resource to be able to do that, which, is understandable. But actually it's then being able to use what you have well. And I think you've got to have a hybrid approach. I look at clients of ours and those that are doing well actually have a focus on sales. Those that aren't doing well don't have a focus on it at all.
Absolutely.
You get good at what you do. Yeah. So, if you're looking at it and you're reporting on it and you have a focus on it, then actually you get good at it. And whether that means that you drive online sales, whether that means that you do, the old school approach, you get them to come in. And do you know what? We have bricks and mortar facilities, and actually we do have to bring them in, make them feel valued, show them what we do, because there are lots of people out there that don't actually understand the gym world or the fitness industry, and they are scared.
Absolutely.
And you got to bring them in, and you got to say, hey, we're not that scary. So there is very much still that approach. And I think it's interesting you say about, some of your clients as well. I think The ones we see do really well are the ones that pretty much do everything. You know, they do an online approach, they do a phone approach, they do a come in and tour approach, and they're very much chopping and changing, and I guess listening to their market, listening to their potential clients, and they're adaptive. I think that's probably.
Yeah, I think it's very easy, isn't it? It's very easy when a lot of clubs will go, well, we've only got a small team of 5 or 6. We can't do that. And then I find it a lot when I go into clients, and you're right, most have moved away from having a dedicated sales team as such. And you go in and go, well, why can't we do the old school? Why can't we do a tour? Why can't a personal trainer do a tour? And in a strange way, they're probably more geared to doing a tour than anyone else in the club, because they're used to asking the 4 W's and H's, what, where, why, when, how. That forms part of their client checks and reviews. Whenever they're sat down with the client, what do you want to achieve, when, where? It's just the norm for them. So for them to sit down with a client on a membership tour, it's just pretty much exactly the same, but obviously a few differences in the questions and a bit of a slant on how you ask it. But there's no reason why they can't. And that's why I always find it strange how although the numbers of staff have gone down, in terms of what we deliver, shouldn't actually have changed that much. We can still do telephone calls when they're quiet. They just choose not to. We can still do tours when clients come into the club. We just choose not to, or we don't train. I think the big thing is we don't train our teams, and then we don't utilise the systems that you guys have and other CRMs have to then maximise this automation and the other side of it to maximise the sales. I mean, GymSales, which you guys do as a program, is fantastic for driving sales and supporting that process. So I can imagine it's really frustrating. You go into a club and go, guys, we have this, but you've got to still do that to make this work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing sometimes I see is you'll talk to a potential client or even a client, and you'll say, all right, talk to me about your process. You know, they recognize that sales is something that they need to get better at. So you'll say, talk me through your process. And you'll ask them about their leads, you know, where do your leads come from? And they come from the general channels, you know, Facebook, website, social media channels, all those normal outreach, all those sorts of things. So then we talk about, okay, well, where do those leads go? Now, sometimes those leads don't go anywhere but an email inbox. And then from there, they might get a phone call, they might get an email, but actually we cross our fingers and we hope that they show up and they join.
Yeah.
But yet they've spent so much money on this marketing side of things, but actually they do nothing then to be able to follow up. And the follow-up is such a big part of the process. And, you know, I know that there's this stigma at the moment that, you know, sales is a bit of a dirty word and, you know, it should all be about retention. Absolutely. I'm all for retention. I've been there, and you know what? It costs more money to go out and find new members than what it does to keep your existing members. But we all have revolving doors. It happens, you know.
Well, even a great club will lose a third of their members every year.
Exactly. And the thing that you got to remember, though, is yes, you've got that revolving door. But actually, when we're talking about retention starts at the prospecting stage. It starts about when you actually go out and you find these leads, and then you call them and you service them, you invite them in. I mean, we're not selling bad stuff here. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather be proactive rather than load up the NHS or any other, you know, system out there. Actually, let's get these people in, let's get them active, and let's show them that we're not actually that scary and we're not that bad. But unfortunately, there is that stigma out there, and that starts at the sales process. It starts at going out and getting your leads. And I think people think the retention starts at when they become a member, but it doesn't. It starts way before then.
Well, the thing is, you're right, and it's really important because that rapport building starts at that very first impact in terms of them trusting your brand, in terms of them getting involved in what you do. That starts from whether that's the telephone call, and even down to, I mean, we've all learned this in our time. You've got anywhere between 5 and 30 seconds, depending on where you read, to make a first impression. But that's not just when they turn up at your club. That's on the telephone. That's potentially even down to how your marketing works. If you're giving the wrong impression of who you are, that person's turned off instantly. But that also, like you say, then follows through that whole journey all the way through to the retention. So if you start that rapport well and you keep that process going, then they stay as members. I think you're right in the sense that quite often what happens is we do all this great marketing, someone gets really excited, comes into the club and doesn't get the same experience as to what they've had online, or whether it was outreach or whatever it was. That's amazing. They suddenly turn up and it doesn't match what they're being told. And even if they do join, they join in then with a different expectation to what they actually came in. So now they're already on that slippery slope down, and people just don't understand that.
Yeah.
And it's the same as what you were saying in terms of sales being a dirty word. And I think I teach this all the time, and you'll be the same view here, that we're not selling cars, we're not selling insurance. I do sell insurance for various other things, but we're not selling that sort of thing. We're selling a product that people want. We're not actually, although we call it sales, I think we call it sales because it's the sales process, but we're not actually selling. We're building rapport, we're finding a solution, and we're helping people get healthy and fit. And so people need to get away from the fact that it's a sales thing, because as soon as you bring a new member of staff in and you go, right, this is the sales process, instantly in their head going, oh, we're selling cars, we're selling whatever. And that becomes a stumbling block. So maybe we need to change the vocabulary we use around the process.
I used to take trainings for membership consultants, and actually the first thing that I would always do is when they would come into the room, they've got 5 days of training, and I would always tell them to leave their sales hat at the door. They walk in and actually they're a doctor. They need to put on their white coat, they put on their stethoscope, because actually they're prescribing fitness. That's what they're doing. And they need to look at it as not a sales approach. Okay, yes, we've got to chase our numbers. Yes, we need to get X amount of leads, and this is our conversion rates, and we can tweak numbers here and there. But actually, at the heart of what we do is health and fitness, and it's not selling cars. Like you said, it's not a bad thing. And I think sometimes there is this stigma around that whole sales word, and we just need to actually get away from that and not think of it as a bad word.
Oh, absolutely. And so just coming back to the point where we're now not necessarily got these dedicated sales teams. I think it's only the sort of David Lloyds and a few of the others that have got them left. But how do you think clubs are adapting to this? Are they doing it well? Are you seeing good examples of where clubs are adapting this process and putting it into play and making it work?
Yeah, I think those that are doing it well have an automated approach to help them, because at the end of the day, they're doing 50 million things, and, the basics are still the basics. We know that if you go out and you capture a lead, that person contacts you, chances are they've also contacted 5 to 10 other gyms in the area. And actually it's going to be the first one that contacts them and gets them in, they're going to go and join, right? So reality is, when you've got a multi-skilled team, they can't then just sit there waiting for the leads to come through, because they don't have the time. They're doing cancellations, or they're helping with a group fitness class, whatever else they're doing. So having something that's automated to be able to assist with that is really imperative. And we know that you have to have an omni-channel approach. So that's not just phone calls, but it's emails, it's SMSs. It's a digital world these days. We book online for our doctor's appointments, and actually you should be doing the same thing. And if you're not, you're behind in the times.
One. Right, slight technical error there, Steffi, but we will carry on. So we were talking about how the sales process really starts with the prospecting, and how do you guys work it, or how do you like to get it to work so that we have this seamless flow from prospect to joining to member, and then obviously into retention? How do you find that works with, say, your systems, or how you guys train it out to your teams?
Yeah, so I guess with our system, it's purely a prospecting system, and that's just what we do. And then what we do is we actually work on integrating with other member management systems. So, from our perspective, we integrate with things like your website, Facebook, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. So, you work hard on getting all these leads from these platforms. They come into our system. You can then nurture them through an omni-channel approach. And then from there, then it moves into your member management system. So some of our clients will do for their first, say, 60 to 90 days of their new member life cycle within our system. And then it moves into their member management system or their retention system, because, you know, they can see financial history, all that sort of stuff, where, you know, a system like ours can't. But I guess, you know, that's where everything's going. Everyone wants a holistic approach. Yeah. Like holistic, an ecosystem that, you know, everything does everything. But actually, what happens is when everyone tries to do, if you have one person that tries to do everything, they become, what's the saying? Jack of all trades, master of none. So, you know, for our philosophy, we purely do prospecting, and that's exactly what we do. But then we'll spend the time actually working on our integrations so that we can then integrate with other partners that are the best at your member management system or the best at the retention system. So, yeah. That's
and if you guys found there's because obviously last 5-10 years social media's just gone crazy. So if you found a lot of the automations and a lot of the stuff you've had to integrate into your system has changed significantly over the sort of last 3, 4, 5 years, or was it pretty much stuff you had in place and it was just a matter of tweaking it into where things are going now?
Yeah, I think you know, social media has been around for a good like 5-6 years now, hasn't it? Or probably even longer than that. But actually, people using it is probably now more than ever. You know, with our platform, it's easy to integrate. There's a couple of different which ways, and you know, for those technical gurus out there, I'm sure that they'll want to know that's, you know, API, email, contact form, all that sort of stuff. But actually, it's quite simple. You know, we pull it in, and it doesn't matter if you have a, I don't know what sort of website, but you can have whatever you want. And, you know, you'll have a landing page, or you use your Facebook, or you'll use even LinkedIn, whatever. And then they pull through. So I wouldn't say that there's been massive changes. I think, I think you've got to know your area. You've got to know your demographic. You know, if I'm in an older demographic, then things like social media probably aren't going to work so well. You know, but actually being on the ground, going to events, you know, local school fete, or all those sorts of things are actually.
Do you know that's still that's such a lost art these days. The amount of clubs I go into and go, right, let's go and do outreach. What's your outreach plan? And they look at you just blank. It's social media, or it's nothing, and it's just like, wow, guys, get out. Like you say, school fates. I was like the primary schools. Primary schools are such a, the kids have book bags. It's such a nice relationship to have with things like that. The local schools, the local sports clubs, even down to the local supermarkets, so you can get in there and making sure you're regularly around it. You can make so much good community work and get your name out there by being out in the community. But we seem to. The thing is, that's even a cheaper option than going with social media a lot of the time. They add, you know, getting out doing it, not cheaper on time necessarily, but definitely cheaper on your wallet.
Yeah, I think
I miss it.
I'm often asked about, you know, lead generation, what should we do? And, you know, my answer hasn't really ever changed from even when I was actually in the clubs, is actually you've got to be known. You've like, if I'm just Joe Blogs and I'm chatting to my friend, and, you know, she says, oh, what gym should I join? Then it's going to be the first one that comes to my mind. Now, when I say the first one that comes to my mind, it means I've got to be out there in the local community. So, you know, like even simple things like they might put like wedding fairs in, or being involved in the primary schools, or, you know, the local coffee shop. Actually, it's being known. And if you're known, then people will recommend you. And actually that there is your biggest source of lead generation, is referrals.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, it's not just referrals from members. I think people misunderstand that word of referrals. They quite often think, oh, I've got to look inside my club for referrals, when actually your local beauty therapist, or your local hairdresser, or your local cafe bar, like you're saying, even down to your local pub and whatever, if they know who you are and they're referring you, that's as big a referral as you'll get within the club. Yes, it's easier in the club because you've got the captive market, everyone's enjoying what you're doing. But referrals need to come outside of the business as well, and I think that's where people are losing it. And like I say, they're focusing everything on social media with them, and it's sort of going, the social ads company needs to be part of what you do, not everything of what you do. And I think, yes, it does
support it. I think your social media can support also your outreach sort of activities. Do you know what I mean? It can help and yeah, so I definitely think there's an importance there. But thinking about good old lead generation, anytime I used to go into a new site, I always used to say, right, where's our local, who's our best hairdresser in the area, who's our best beauty spot, and who's our best coffee. And I would always go and give them a complimentary membership, because absolutely. They are the talkers. They are the ones that chit chat away and tell people. And actually, when they come in and they do a class at 6 a.m. and then they can't bend down to get a coffee mug, well, they're going to tell that other person who's then, do you know what I mean? So they get talking and it creates a conversation. And that's what you've got to do with lead generation. You've got to start a conversation.
I think it hasn't. COVID didn't help either, because I think what COVID did, it drew everybody into the clubs, and obviously because they weren't allowed out, they weren't allowed to have flyers, they weren't allowed to be out and about getting in people's faces. It sort of stopped, and because that stopped, a lot of clubs haven't really got back into the habit of doing it, or they've just found they've gone, well, we get a few leads from social media, we get a few leads from our website, whatever that, and then they get stuck in that routine that they don't need to get out of the club. And as we all know, it's all about routine, especially sales. Sales is a process. I always tell people, yes, the act of selling is personality and it's an art, but in terms of the actual process, in terms of making sure you follow from stage to stage to stage to get them in the door, that is a structured process. And if it's in place, it works. If it's not in place, it literally is just chuck some stuff out and hope that it comes back. I mean, you only have to speak to a social ads company and they will give you lists and lists of clubs that have come back and moaned at the social media company, oh, you haven't got me sales. And they go, but how many leads have we generated? Yeah, but they were rubbish leads. You're not going, are they, or are your process just poor? Because the leads coming in, granted, some of them will be. I mean, we're doing a club in London at the moment, and we've got a great offer on, and a lot of the leads that are coming in, they're in the wrong area. They haven't realised the location properly, and you ring them up and they're in the wrong area. And that happens. But as a general rule, it tends to be the process of the club that those leads are coming in, and then
it's funny you say that. So we work with a lot of digital marketing agencies purely for that fact, because their clients are saying, well, the leads aren't great, and they're like, well, hang on a second, they are. And actually, when they put a system in like ours, for instance, or it could be any CRM system, actually they then start to see, oh, well, actually, okay, the leads are coming in and perhaps maybe their contact to appointment ratio is not where it's at. So let's do some training around that. Exactly. Or actually, okay, the conversation, the quality of our conversation is actually quite good. So actually, maybe it is, where the leads are coming from and the quality of the leads, or do you know what I mean? So it gives you that visual. And I think I'm a massive believer in being able to understand your pipeline. So the first thing that we would always talk about, and you would do the same thing with the sales team, is right, let's have a look at the sales. Okay, are we hitting target? Okay, maybe not. Right, let's work backwards. So how many people are we sitting in front of, or how many presentations are we doing? Now let's have a look at actually the quality of our tour. Are we doing a museum tour, or are we actually, drilling in and doing a value tour where actually these people see benefit? And then we look at our offers. Then from there, we go back to our phone calls, or actually even before that, we look at our tours. Are they even showing up? I mean, how many people actually book appointments and they don't show up? And interestingly enough, we see it time and time again. They'll be booking these appointments and they don't show up, but they then put a confirmation text message in, and actually their show ratio pretty much doubles.
Is that right?
Yeah. Wow. So making sure that you have a confirmation message, and it could be like, hey, Ryan, looking forward to seeing you at Club X tomorrow at 3 p.m. Reply Y to confirm. Because you reply Y, you've now got that. There's that value on it, isn't there? There's that time on it. Where actually, when you don't have a confirmation, you just simply forget about it, don't you? So.
I think the thing is as well, what I think a lot of clubs when we talk to, because you'll be the same era as me, maybe not as old as me, but it was always confirmation call in the morning. So it's in the evening if it was a morning tour, it was in the morning if it was afternoon tour. And it was all about, because whereas going to a doctor or a dentist or something like that, it's you don't want to let them down because you're trying to get something. We're not that. The level of importance to come and tour your gym is actually quite far down the list on their daily things. So when they're rushing from work, got to pick the kids up, they can easily forget. They can easily go, I'll do it another day. It doesn't have that. It has to happen now. So to have that confirmation call and remind them, it's a bit like if someone's 5-10 minutes late. We always encourage our clubs to ring that person then. Don't ring them 2 hours later after the appointment should have been. that's too late. You want to ring them 5 or 10 minutes if they're late, just to check if they're coming. One, that allows you to crack on with some other work if they're not going to turn up. But secondly, they might have gone out of work, completely forgot they got the appointment. You ring them and go, oh, yes, I'm on the way now. And it just reminds you, but so many clubs just won't do that. We don't want to harass them. We don't want to hassle them. You're not. They're late for an appointment. They're booked. So what's the problem with calling?
Well, they could be lost.
Absolutely.
They could be lost.
But it comes back to that. Sales is a dirty word. And so actually what you are doing, you're helping that person by phoning up and confirming you're still coming. Like you say, they might be lost or might have forgotten. And if we go all the way back, I always remember being told that quite often the person who's inquiring about joining has probably walked past your front door 7 times before getting the courage to actually come into the club. I remember when I owned my own club, so here's a great story. So when I owned my club, we had a lady who it was a bit bizarre. She just walked in, threw her a credit card, said, sign me up for PT. That was her words. I was like, you stood on the desk going, wow, as a business owner, happy days. It's a bit weird, but yeah, okay. Didn't ask the price, didn't ask anything. And then once we'd sat down, obviously before I took her money, we were like, what's going on? In case she was a little bit mad. But we sat down, she goes, I've walked past your club, going home 10, 15, 20 times. I've never had the courage to come in. So I've got my card, I'm ready to go. Take my money now or I won't come back in. And it was that. And you sort of go, that's not unusual, except obviously the way she did it probably was. But it's not unusual approach. So if someone books an appointment and then we just allow them not to, chances are it could be 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, or never that person actually gets into the club. Because like you say, they're nervous, they're unsure, they don't know what's going to happen. So it's really important we treat it like that rather than a sales encounter.
Yeah, you're 100% right with that. I actually just recently had an experience of one of my really good friends. We were chatting and I've never actually broached the whole gym subject with her, and we just somehow got onto the subject. I think actually I was telling her about how my glutes hurt or something like that. And she was like, oh, I've never been, I'm just too scared, I would never do it. And I was like, do you want to come? Like, let's go and do it. And I encouraged her to come, and she came and we did a cycle class. Probably not the best class to do first up, but I made sure she turned down her dial. But actually, she's now come and she's now joined.
Wow.
But she even said to me, we were actually just stretching the other day, and she said to me, if you never had have done that, I never would have come in. But now I've realized actually it's not that bad in here. But she said it's really daunting even walking in the doors. And I wouldn't say, like, the gym I'm a member of is a leisure center. It's friendly, like it's fat, it's great. But actually there's still that stigma about it. And that's where, we were talking before about, where the process starts with the retention and that sort of stuff. It starts right at the beginning. And getting away from sales and, that person not showing up, actually, let's just check in and say, you've showed interest, you want to make a change. Actually, let's help you,
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for.
And that's what it should be. I mean, you only have to look back of when you take your kids to the first time to sport. I remember taking Scarlett, my daughter started hockey at 14, so 13. So it's quite because usually it's 6 or 7 they start, and then they're with their team all the way through. And it's quite a big thing to start a new sport. I mean, we moved from Nottingham to Yorkshire not long ago, and it's hard to start new clubs and stuff like that. So, and I don't think I'm a confident guy, but even for me to join a new cricket club or a new hockey club or get involved in the whole social, it's a big thing to do. So if you're not as outgoing and as comfortable around people and whatever, it must be really, really difficult to. And it's our job as salespeople and as clubs to make that as comfortable a process as possible. And the only way you do that is to keep communication open, to make it friendly, and to do all the things we do, but take it away from a transactional business. And same again, the only way you do that is no museum tours. It's all about rapport building and all these things we've talked about to make it an industry that people want to come be a part of. But it's scary how many people think like that.
Yeah, and it's also, you can add value to your content. So that person might, for whatever reason, might not join now, but you end up sending them content via email, via SMS, whatever, and you slowly educate them, and it might be, I don't know, a nutrition fun fact, or it might be, hey, this is what this piece of kit does, or do you know what I mean? Whatever it is, or actually this is what our running group does, or do you know what I mean? So it's small bits of content adding value and actually opening them up into your world and showing them that it's not that bad. And actually, when they're then ready to join, the first place they're then going to go is actually the one that's kept in contact and the one that's actually been welcoming and supportive and actually held their hand a little bit. And I think that's where sometimes we're very quick to get rid of our leads. And I know we have GDPR and I know that's a massive, point of conversation, but that person has shown legitimate needs when they've inquired originally. And just because they don't join within a month doesn't mean that you still can't communicate with them. Each business has their own, business practice around that. And that's a whole different topic.
Never get rid of a lead until they're
exactly. But
asked to leave.
I do know that there are leisure centres and everything out there that are regulated by, councils and everything, and they have to be quite regulated. And I get that. But actually, you've still got 12 months. And you can actually still take them through quite a journey during that time frame. And it really baffles me when I talk to clubs and club operators and everything, and they contact them 2-3 times and then they get rid of the lead. I think you spend so much money, so much time going after this lead, and just because they didn't answer, or maybe they said, oh, I'm not right now, or I don't have time, they get rid of the lead. But actually, it's insane. And on average, it takes 12 touch points to get someone to join. Like you were saying before, to on average 7 going past their facility, but it takes 12 touch points, and most people give up after 2 or 3. So
it's crazy. I guess that's where the automation works now. There's some great programs like yours that will allow a lot of that automation to happen. So once it's set up, the actual call ratio, I mean, obviously when we were running clubs back in the day, it was very much, it was telephone or it's text off your mobile. Now at least you've got that ability to email, to text, and that's all automated. So no one's having to physically go in and go, right, we need to send that email, send that text, send that. Which is great. So it makes life so much easier. So they do have that support now, which is fantastic, but it shouldn't take away that personal approach, that telephone call, making sure that if someone was pregnant or someone was got certain goals, that, like you say, you send them something specific for that goal. I mean, if we're clever about it, we could probably even automate that sort of thing. But
absolutely,
it just takes obviously a bit of thought and a bit of setup. But I can imagine you guys have got tags in your system that allow you to tag for nutrition for whatever you decide those tags are, and at month 1 it sends this, at month 3 it sends that, and so on. So there's definitely ways you can use systems like yours, which are really clever, to take away the ownership as such to a lot of this stuff, but then obviously mix that then and make sure that you're doing the call. I mean, I watched a guy in America, and I can't remember his name. I should keep remembering his name, but he was 28 contact points, he says, before you give up. And even to the point, I mean, slightly different because the Americans are used to being sold to. So I think if you did 28 in the UK, you might get before long. But his was 28, even to the point that they were doing 2 telephone calls. So you'd ring first. If you didn't get a contact straight away or didn't pick up, you'd ring straight back. And the idea behind that is, if they don't recognise your number and you ring twice, they think it potentially is urgent, so that they pick up. Now, I thought that was quite a clever approach, and we have used it at some of the clubs, and it does work. So they might think it's the school, or they might think, you know what I mean? So they end up picking up. So it does work. The other one is to ring. If they don't pick up, send a text, and because obviously now they know who it is, they're more likely to get back to you. But yeah, 28 contact points, he reckoned. I was like, wow, that's
quite a lot, isn't it?
Workload involved in that. I mean, you do need significant staffing levels to hit 28 contact points per person. But yeah, so just moving on slightly. I mean, what would you say in terms of your experience at the moment is probably the biggest challenges that the clubs are facing from a sales element?
I think actually it's that whole automation piece. Lots of manual tasks. I think a lot of people are still manually doing things, or they're manually adding a lead in, or they're manually sending an email, or manually following them up. That would probably be the biggest thing that we see as a challenge. And with that comes obviously then being able to see actually where your leads are coming from and what's successful. I think sometimes you have club operators spending lots of money, but actually, is it really successful? And is that what's driving you conversions? Like, are they actually good lead channels for you? But it's being able to actually have visual around that. So is it worth us going to X event? Because actually last time we went, this is what it was. This is, this was the process we followed. Maybe we do some tweaks and actually that will get us X result. So, I
imagine you see that a lot with what you guys do, because it's obviously suddenly now you're reporting on it. A lot of CRMs don't go that far in detail. They sometimes capture the lead in terms of how it's come in and so on. But I can imagine yours is a lot more detailed in terms of what information they can gather from that, because you'd be amazed how many people just keep repeating just because they think they should do it. It's a bit like social. Some people will do it and it doesn't work. For whatever reason, it just doesn't work in their area. The demographics isn't right, it doesn't, but they carry on spending the money. And you're like going, at some point, you have to go, that isn't successful. Now, ads companies might say it's potentially your ad and then they can tweak and whatever. But I have seen clubs where we've tweaked it, we've changed it, and it just hasn't worked. And then when they've gone out more, like we've talked about, more into the community, they've got better results. So that's what they need to focus on. But quite often, if you keep chucking and you're not looking at where you're spending it and what you're doing with that, you can just keep throwing money at dead wood and just keep going and going and going and not getting the benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we see that very often, to be fair.
Yeah, I can imagine. So it's been a real insight today, Steffi. So what I'd like to do, just before we finish, is we always finish with this. In terms of a motivator, who would you say, who or what would you say is probably the biggest motivator in terms of what you do and what gets you out of bed? Some people, I try and avoid family, just because everybody is motivated by family. I've got 3 lovely kids, and obviously that drives me and my girlfriend. But what is there someone else or something that drives you to keep you doing what you're doing?
My horses.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, look, my horses are a big part of my life. I compete, and that's a pretty big motivator for me. I've got some pretty big
jumping.
Dressage, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've got some pretty big aspirations with that. I'd really like to represent Australia, and
wow, you are good.
I wouldn't say I'm good, but you get good at what you do. So that's my motto at the moment. You get good at what you do. So I'm constantly trying to build good habits.
Are you close to that though? Are you?
Yeah, I nearly did this year, and hopefully maybe next year. So.
Oh wow, that's amazing. I know I used to train a lady. Horses Inside Out, the lady who paints the horses, and that you can see all the movement with the rider. And I'll send you the links. It's really clever. She paints the horses so you can see the muscles and the bones.
Oh wow!
And how they move, and obviously with the rider on. And you can see how the different skeletal systems working. Yeah, she does a lot of. She doesn't just paint horses. It's obviously she's written about 10 books on the biomechanics of a horse and stuff like that. But it's really interesting how she does. She was on Countryfile and stuff like that with what she does. But obviously, completely different subject to what we're talking about. But yeah, I'll send you the links. You'll find it interesting. So really appreciate your time, Steffi. I know we've had a few challenges today, but thankfully we got through it. But I really appreciate your time. If anybody does want to touch base with Steffi about her sales management system, all the links will be at the end of the podcast, so you can jump on, get in touch with her. Well worth having a look. Whatever size business you guys are out there. Definitely have a look at the GymSales system. It's a great system. Really allows you to focus down on your membership sales processes and to get those leads in and get them converting. So absolutely give Steffi a shout. Appreciate your time, and we will catch up again soon.
Fabulous. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Steffi. So apologies for all of the challenges. Ooh,
that's right.
hold on. Let's just stop.